This is Photographing the West podcast, the podcast for people who love to explore the western highways and byways while photographing the landscape and wildlife. And now here's your host, Kirby Flanagan.
Hello, and welcome to the Photographing the West podcast. I'm your host, Kirby Flanagan. This is episode number 40, and it's brought to you by Flanagan Photos. Today's guest is Jennifer Leigh Warner, wildlife photographer, blogger, and author. Welcome to the Photographing the West podcast, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So tell everybody who doesn't know you about yourself and your photography.
Yeah. Well, I'm a conservation wildlife photographer living in California. I started photographing wildlife after I graduated from Washington State University in 2005. My primary focuses are on fine art wildlife photography and landscape photography, as well as human and wildlife conflicts in conservation photography.
Okay, and I guess if I understood things right, you have or formerly had a business in portrait photography. Is that something that you're still doing, or did you leave that in favor of the nature and wildlife photography?
Yeah, I had a business. I started actually in college with a friend. We did some wedding photography and newborns and family portraits. But I really started doing a lot of portrait photography after college. I started working for a company called Lifetouch, and I spent 9 years working as a photographic trainer for that company. So I would travel around the country and train portrait photographers on how to photograph, primarily preschool photography, and develop some training material for them. I left Lifetouch in 2017 to pursue my wildlife photography full time. And I haven't been doing too many family portraits or weddings since, but every once in a while I get asked to by a friend or family, and then I'll do it. But primarily my focus now is on wildlife and conservation.
Great. So you're very busy on social media. How do you find the time, and how does that fit into your business model?
Yeah, I believe that social media is a really powerful tool for visual artists such as myself to reach a wide audience. So I try to dedicate at least a few hours every day to marketing my business, which means keeping up with a monthly newsletter, writing blogs, and trying to post at least twice a day on Facebook and Instagram.
Wow, that does keep you busy.
For sure.
So you mentioned recently that print sales were an important part of your business plan. What's your secret sauce, and how's that working out for you?
Yeah. So with my current business structure, print sales is the driving force to that business. I make every effort to participate in at least 2 art shows or festivals per month. I also utilize other outlets such as art galleries and local businesses to showcase my work. I'm also on several online stores as well. So the secret to my successful print sales is persistence and quality. So many artists invest in art show setups and all that goes into putting together print sales. And after a few shows, they'll find they've actually lost money. And that's a really common tale, and it happens to me as well. But the secret really is to be persistent, to continue to do them, because many art buyers, they'll rarely purchase art on the first time meeting that artist. They'll come back to other shows in the area looking for those artists, and that's really where the success starts to happen, is building those customer relationships and creating a loyal customer base. That's really where you start to make some good money and some good success in print sales. Another important aspect to my business is providing small, inexpensive things for sale as well, such as magnets, art cards, and mouse pads. And these small items can add up quickly and make up the difference for shows that have less image buyers.
So you're kind of on the circuit, as it were. Let me rephrase that. So what areas do you go to for the art shows?
Yeah, so I particularly stay to the West, having living in California. I always have to drive because I'm carrying a booth and all my images. So I am in California, both Southern and Northern California. My last show was in Washington State, and I go as far as Wyoming, which will be my next show, is in Jackson Hole next weekend.
Oh, nice. So you're finding that with persistence, you're able to keep your head above water financially with these shows?
Yeah, absolutely. With selling art, one or two sales can really make or break your business. So it seems the more that I do them, the more I tend to have more success. I learn through customer feedback what people tend to like. Not always what I like is what they like. So really listening to my customers and asking questions, what they're looking for, and things like that is what builds the business and makes me more successful.
How are those online sales venues working for you?
They're not my best avenue for selling. They generate a few sales here and there that fill in the gaps. And I think that's a really important lesson for anyone trying to pursue photography as a career, is realizing that there isn't really one aspect that's going to make you successful. It's having as many different avenues coming in that will generate income for you, whether they're stock sales or those online galleries, workshops, presentations, all those things. Doing a little bit of everything can get you income when one thing or another is failing. So a few things here and there, but not my most successful.
Right. That seems to be the general experience from talking to other folks. So how about gallery sales? How are those doing for you?
Gallery sales can be hit and miss. I've had some pretty successful shows, and I've had a lot of shows where I haven't sold anything. I think more than anything, you'll get good exposure and introduce your work to new audiences. And so I usually see gallery shows more as a marketing tool and less as a selling tool, but I have had limited success.
Okay. Oh, good. That's more than a lot of folks, I think. So your social media presence includes a lot of videos. What equipment do you use for those, and how do the videos fit into your photography business?
Yeah, so for videos on social media, I always use my cell phone. These videos are intended to be behind the scenes clips that will allow my audience to get to know me as a person. It's easy to forget that there's a person behind an image, and that if you see a picture, say, of a herd of elk crossing a river, for example, that there's a person who got up in the middle of the night, they drove for hours, they went into this, deep into this location where they're hiding in the tall grass and then just hoping that the elk cross in that particular area. And it's easy to forget that when you just see an image and say, well, that's really pretty. So I think those videos allow my audience to understand what goes into creating an image, and it helps to get to know me as a person and as an individual, as opposed to just being an artist. I also use video in other aspects of my work outside of social media. I don't consider myself a videographer by any means, but I do notice that customers are wanting more and more videos. So I always make attempts to create short videos with my DSLR camera as well whenever I'm out photographing, and try to use those videos for different promotional purposes. And I am currently working on an art project that will feature some of those clips that will be announced later this year.
Oh, okay, good. Let me know when that happens.
Yeah.
So you have videos on YouTube, and that's part of the whole plan?
Yep, videos on YouTube. I've been contacted by a few different production companies that utilize those clips for a variety of wildlife. YouTube will allow me to show a little bit more to a story than what a photograph can do sometimes. With giraffes, like for example, one of the videos on my YouTube channel has a video of giraffes necking. So with an image, you get a nice, powerful, impactful image of them touching necks, but with the video, it'll show you really what that looks like, which almost looks like a dance with them swinging their necks around. So YouTube allows me to just continue to show more of what was happening in the situations that I'm photographing.
Okay, well, that makes sense, and sounds like you're getting some attention for those videos as well, so that's great. So you're chairman of the NANPA Ethics Committee. What are your duties as committee chair, and what challenges do you face in that position?
Yeah, so photography ethics are of the utmost importance to me in my work, and I spend a great deal of my time educating photographers about the importance of photographing our subjects responsibly. As the chair of the NANPA Ethics Committee, I help facilitate a team of wildlife photography experts on creating educational materials on ethical related issues, as well as deal with ethical related issues in the field as they come up in our community. We recently created a truth in captioning document that lays out a set of guidelines to follow when labeling images, and we are currently working on an ebook for ethical field practices that should be due out early in 2019. I think our biggest challenge that we face is navigating the gray areas in what is considered ethical behavior. There's no real wrong or right way of photographing. It's more a set of guidelines that we encourage photographers to follow, that they can make the best choices when they're out in the field for individual situations. Ultimately, our goal is to do our best to lessen our impact on the natural world and to allow and to always have our subjects' well-being in mind.
So one of the common dilemmas when you're photographing wildlife in the field is when the wildlife approaches you. What's NANPA's approach to that?
Making your best decisions out in the field. So we want to encourage photographers to follow regulations. Every area has different regulations. So for example, in Grand Teton National Park or Yellowstone National Park, which is a popular place that people photograph wildlife, you need to be staying at least 25 yards away from wildlife and 100 yards away from bears and wolves. And, if that wildlife approaches you, you should be backing up or moving out. So if a bear is coming towards you, you need to back up. And if it seems aggressive, it's time to leave.
For sure. So what would you say to all the folks who aren't professional photographers or even amateur photographers, but are out there taking pictures with their cell phones?
Yeah. So that's actually a big project that I've been working on. It's called How Humans Impact Wildlife Behavior. And it really focuses on wildlife enthusiasts, tourists, as well as photographers, and how we've managed to lose our fear of wildlife. And, we're constantly seeing people taking selfies with wild animals. We're seeing people approaching wild animals. And there have been a lot of situations recently where people are getting seriously hurt, and the animals are getting hurt as well. And so the work that I'm doing is trying to create educational material for anyone who's out enjoying wildlife, and make them understand this isn't a petting zoo. These are wild animals, and we need to, not be impacting their behavior. And that means not feeding them, not trying to pet them, and giving them their space to be wild.
Yeah, I frequently observe that people in Yellowstone in particular think they're in Disneyland and don't even do sensible things around wildlife or any of the natural features. It's just kind of blows your minds at times. So getting back to NANPA, what services does NANPA provide to nature and wildlife photographers?
So NANPA provides information, education, inspiration, and opportunities for persons interested in nature photography. They provide equipment insurance, educational opportunities such as webinars, conferences, and in-field workshops. I'll actually be speaking at their next conference that is in February of 2019 in Las Vegas. And we'll also be leading one of their regional workshops in Washington State in August of 2019. And there's a lot of information about everything that they offer on their website at nampa.org.
Okay, thanks. So you were recently published in Outdoor Photographer. Talk about the process of getting published. Does getting published increase your recognition as a photographer or help your business in other ways?
Yeah, publications are a great way for photographers to get recognition and gain credibility within the industry. I was fortunate enough to get to sit down in person with outdoor photographer editor Wes Pitts and discuss my idea for my article. This article was particularly important to me as I wanted to gain awareness for the grizzlies of Greater Yellowstone area and their recent delisting from the endangered species list.
And how does that fit into your business, or is that part of your ethics work?
Well, as far as publications, it's all part of, dipping into each area of wildlife photography publications. It's certainly a great way of getting recognition for your work, and it helps for my business, as far as gaining credibility when I'm being asked to speak at events for the ethics work. For the grizzly bears, that comes down to one of the things that I focus on, which is human conflicts with wildlife, and the grizzly bears being opened up for a trophy hunting season, and trying to prevent people from removing important predators from our ecosystem.
So you mentioned that you're working on a project focusing on the Wyoming grizzlies. Is that what you're talking about, or is that something separate?
Yes, it is part of the project that I'm working on for the Wyoming grizzlies. And that is just kind of a little history there. In 2017, the grizzlies in Wyoming were removed from the endangered species list. And due to this, they lost their federal protection and are now open to a trophy hunting season that's scheduled for this fall. Grizzly bears in Yellowstone, as well as other wildlife, are beloved by people all over the world, and tourism brought in by that wildlife generates over $3.2 billion to that local economy. Also, removing critical predators can have drastic impacts to our ecosystem as well. So I recently met with an organization called Wyoming Wildlife Advocates, and I'm working on projects to raise awareness to the importance of this issue. And our goal is to reverse the decision to open up a hunting season for these beloved animals.
I see. Okay. Speaking of conservation issues, talk about your work with the Cheetah Conservation Fund.
Yeah. So the Cheetah Conservation Fund is an organization that is very important to me. I have always had a special place in my heart for the cheetah, and it's actually why I became a conservation photographer, was to help save the species. I began working with CCF in 2017 and have been photographing their events throughout California, where they help raise awareness to the rapid decline of the cheetah population. There's currently less than 7,100 cheetahs left in the world, and CCF works in Namibia to help protect these animals in the wild. Later this year, I will be traveling to Africa to help document the work that Dr. Lori Marker and her team is doing in the field.
So speaking of Africa, your website indicates that you do tours to East Africa with Michelle Gillerman, I guess it is. Tell everybody about those.
Yeah, so part of my business is developing intimate photography workshops and tours to many exciting destinations all over the world. Michelle has been leading groups to Kenya for more than 20 years, and she and I are putting together a group of photographers and wildlife enthusiasts to bring them on a trip of a lifetime to see some of the most exciting and extraordinary wildlife that Africa has to offer. We're limiting our group to 6 people, and we'll be catering the 2019 dates to the group schedule. In addition to Kenya, I'll also be leading a small group to Panama in the spring of 2019 and have a few other exciting trips that I will be announcing later in the year.
Okay. Well, again, let me know. We can always bring you back and talk about those if you like.
Yeah, for sure.
So I understand you're working on a book about birds of the Pacific Flyway also. How's that coming, and how are you fitting that in with everything else?
Yep. So I've been documenting migratory birds along the Pacific Flyway for many years. Living in California, I have a great opportunity to see the birds as they migrate up and down the coast. And I was introduced to a publisher that is putting together this book about the Pacific Flyway, and had an opportunity to contribute many images to the book project. So it's currently in production, and I am waiting to hear back on for a release date.
Okay, so it's not been published yet anyway?
No, not yet.
Okay. So where can people find your work and all the things you're doing, and keep up with what's going on in your photography life?
Yeah. So I have a couple different avenues of finding my work. I talked earlier about the project I do with the human impact on wildlife, and I have a website dedicated to that, which is www.humanimpactonwildlife.org. And that covers a lot of the images that are captured of people approaching wildlife too closely, or feeding wildlife, even petting wildlife, believe it or not. So that's a great way to keep up with that project. The rest of my work can be viewed on my website, which is experiencewildlife.com, as well as my many social media platforms, such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, that all can be found via Experience Wildlife. My next in-person display will be in Jackson Hole, Wyoming on July 13th through 15th. And I will also be displaying some art festivals in the California area in October. And I will also have a display up in Southern California starting in August at the Union Market in Tustin.
Wow. Makes me tired just talking to you.
Yep, it's a full-time job for sure, and a lifestyle you have to maintain in order to be successful in this industry.
Yeah, very true. Well, thanks for being on the show, Jennifer. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. The Photographing the West podcast is published on the 15th and 30th of each month and is available on iTunes, my website at www.flanaganphotos.com, spelled F-O-T-O-S, and most RSS feeds. Thanks for listening, and talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Photographing the West podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast in iTunes and leave us a review. Till next time, here's wishing you safe travels and good light.